Hey, it's Benji Cole, son of Al Cole from CBS Radio and host of People of Distinction, the talk that gives an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. Run to our website, peopleofdistinction.org for more info, or you can always email me directly at benji@alcoleenterprises.com. And on the line with us today, we have Terrie Stadler. We're going to be discussing her amazing children's book, Who's Knocking at My Door? It's available for purchase through Amazon as well as barnesandnoble.com. But people, if you want to gather everything that Terrie has in store, well, do yourself a favor and head directly to her personal site. And that's terriestadlerbooks.com. And Terrie is spelled, just so there's no miscommunication here, or misspellings rather. It's Terrie, Stadler, Stadler, books.com. There you'll find more information on Terrie herself, more information on this fantastic narrative, as well as find hyperlinks set up to take you to the purchasing page. And people, when you're there, you're also going to find another book that Terrie has written called The Wonder of Ninja, both of which are available through Amazon, Barnes & Noble, but more importantly, terriestadlerbooks.com. And I do want to quickly point out that Terrie was brought to our network, People of Distinction, today by one of the best publishers in the business, Author Reputation Press. So if you or anyone you know have written a book, people, I'm telling you, give yourself the best gift you could possibly give. Okay, contact ARP and see what their fantastic team can do for you. They're one of the best in the business to do it, and they specialize in taking your literary creation to the next level. Head on over to authorreputationpress.com today and see how they can help take your book and move it for you. And listen, it is an absolute pleasure to have Terrie here on the line. Now, the moment you head on over to her Amazon, Barnes & Noble pages, her personal website, you start to do any research on her book, Who's Knocking at My Door? Well, you know what we're going to discuss today, okay? Now, it's a fictional children's narrative, and it started off through an event that she experienced herself, okay? And I'm not going to go into too much of the origin story. I'm not going to steal her thunder. That's for her. She'll discuss it. But I am absolutely enthralled with this book, people, and I know you are as well, because it's all about the concept of how many adventures your children can take within your own backyard. I mean, listen, given today's day and age where it just seems like everything costs an arm and a leg, this is amazing, right? You don't have to go out and break the bank to have a wonderful experience with your children. Now, of course, every now and then that's needed, and I get it. But listen, you're going to be able to have a wonderful adventure with your children right in your own backyard, and the wildlife that's out there. And I'm telling you, by the time we're done with today's discussion, you're going to run to our Amazon, Barnes & Noble pages and purchase your copies, because you're going to understand what I'm saying to you here, and it's something that needs to be on your shelf. And at the end of the day, Terrie is the expert. She's written the book. She's going to be able to articulate it much better than I ever could. So let's bring her here with us. Terrie, first and foremost, welcome to People of Distinction, and thank you very much for being a guest. How are you doing today?
I'm doing just great, and I'm really happy that you invited me to your show, because I think I'm really going to enjoy this.
Absolutely. Terrie, listen, the pleasure is all ours, okay? When the book came across our desk and it was an opportunity to have you as a guest, we knew we had to jump at it, okay? Just because, as I mentioned, it's a little nostalgic for me, right? Just being outside playing and experiencing wildlife and playing around with animals. I love it, right? That's great. But also, I think that there is something to be gained here. I think what you're doing with this book is fun, and it's something that parents are going to want. I'm telling you. I know as a parent myself, this is something that we need, and this is something that I know my listening audience is going to thoroughly enjoy. So thank you again for being a guest. The pleasure is all ours. And before we go into the book, I think it's important to start off by learning a little bit more about your background. Terrie, tell us a little bit more about yourself, please.
Yes, I spent almost all of my career years, 35 or more years, in the electronics industry, where I was an electrical drafter. So, there was a lot to that, and I was kind of by myself, making all these drawings and renditions, electronic drawings and production tools for the floor. But then when I was a child, when I was still going to school, there was a teacher in particular who told me that she thought I was going to be a writer, and she inspired me. So in the 1980s, I went and purchased an at-home learning correspondence course from the Institute of Children's Literature. That's kind of where I got my start, because I went into that and there was probably 8 different assignments that I can recall. I do have those stories, and I was told to go ahead and submit the stories. Actually, I didn't, but I still have them. They're all short stories. So that got me started, and it interested me and inspired me somewhat, to go further. Anyway, the years go by and I have my career and everything's going, but then I decided, with that incident that occurred, that's what inspired me to write the book. I thought, I have to write a book about that, because I've never had such an unusual experience. And that is, if we want to talk about, that's what happened. I was staying at my daughter's house here in Fort Myers. I had lost my husband years before that. And so I was, going forward, doing something else with my life. And that's when we heard a knock at the door. So we go to the door, and what do we find? There's a soft-shell turtle at the door. And this is what I really got me started to begin with. So from that, I was able to imagine what might be under the water. I had to use my imagination there to, bring forth this community that lives under the water. And I don't know if you're familiar with the soft shell, but those turtles are quite fast on foot. They are fast. They don't walk. They don't just kind of move along. No, they will race. Probably faster than you do. So he stayed at the door for a while. We thought, well, maybe he's hungry, but he didn't take our morsel, and he turned around and sped off back to his pond. So that's what got me started.
Terrie, thank you so much for explaining that. And listen, if you hadn't told me, I wouldn't have believed it, okay? Having a turtle come up to the door, listen, I found them. Growing up, I'm a New England boy born and raised. I've spent the past almost 2 decades now in Southern California, but I'm born and raised in New England. We have a lot of wildlife there. And I've, of course, been around a lot of turtles and other wildlife. None have ever come to my door, though, right? None have ever come knocking at my doorstep. So that, I wouldn't have believed it if you hadn't told me. Terrie, without further ado, let's jump in. Now, of course, it's a children's narrative, right? So it's not very long, but I do want to get a brief synopsis of your book, Who's Knocking at My Door? Tell us a little bit more about it, please.
Well, this is something that I wanted children to learn from. So that is why my daughter helped by rendering drawings, of different fish and birds and all kinds of wildlife. So we kind of had fun, picking out what kind of pictures do we need, how many, where should we put this one, where would that one go? And so we worked together on that as a project. And that's how it came about as it is and turned out as it is. But there are no pictures of animals in my book that were not there. I really wanted it to be authentic. I wanted to include only those things that I actually did see. Mm-hmm. So, I wanted it to be authentic. That was my goal there. And for children to see that as well, because they, are looking. And this way they'll be looking and they'll be questioning and maybe even trying to get some kind of a relation going with those different animals.
Yeah, absolutely. People, again, we're here on the line with Terrie Stadler. We're discussing her amazing book, Who's Knocking at My Door, available for purchase through Amazon, BarnesandNoble.com. But make sure to check out her personal site, TerrieStadlerBooks.com today to gather everything that she has in store. Terrie, next question, and really a curiosity for myself here, but what would you say was a highlight for you in writing this book? Or if not a highlight, something that surprised you that you weren't anticipating before you started writing it?
I mean, for sure, the biggest highlight was the turtle come into the door because I was so amazed. I mean, we were just sitting around watching TV and I heard this knocking and I thought, well, what's that? And my daughter went first to go see and she goes, oh, you're not going to believe this. So, I go over to the door and I'm like, oh my gosh, we tried to feed him, but he took off. Like I said, they're very fast on foot. So that's what actually inspired the book. And I thought I have to really write a book about this. So, and, like I say, only included pictures of animals that were actually there. I wanted it to be authentic.
Yeah.
And that's what I got. So with her help, with her drawings, we did it. So, and that's, actually that got written like in 2013.
Oh, wow.
And we just brought it forward a couple of years ago, I think, or last year. So that's how that came into being.
Yeah. As we transition here, people, as I mentioned, this is not the only book that Terrie has written, okay? You're going to find another book on her website and Amazon pages called The Wonder of Ninja. Terrie, talk to us about that narrative, please. Give us a brief synopsis of what The Wonder of Ninja entails.
Believe it or not, this is a story about a sixth grader who happened to be me when I was in sixth grade. But I lived up in Ohio at that time, and it was snowing. And the teacher, for some reason, would let us go out on some days for recess. And I was just out there, on the snow, and there was a hill there, and I just was having my own good time. And there were some boys who kept teasing me all the time, and they were at the top of this hill. Well, they decided they were going to run down the hill. Only one of them did. And when he got there, he flipped over my back and fell into the snow, and they had to come and get him out. So that's what that's based on. The fact that you just don't know what you have inside you, what you can do. And I found out.
Absolutely.
And because you just don't know what you have inside you, what you can do. And it was funny to me at the time. I just was hurling around laughing.
Absolutely. Well, I'm sure they learned not to mess with you anymore.
Yes, that's right.
That I'm sure was taken. When it comes to the title of this book, The Wonder of Ninja, I'm curious. I mean, listen, I could assume, given your synopsis that you've just given, where that title comes from and the connection that it has. But you know what happens when you assume, Terrie, so I'm not going to do that to you. I have you here on the line. Let's go directly to the source. Where does that title come from, and why were you inspired to have that be the representation for your book?
I looked up different words and their meanings, and I'm sorry to tell you, I don't remember how I ended up with the wonder, but that has something to do with an explanation of the word wonder itself. From the meaning of it, it's kind of told what we're talking about.
Yeah.
It was a wonder. It was kind of a miracle type thing, but I used that word because I thought it fit, the story. And the ninja, I just like, it's kind of like a ninja move, maybe. And that's how I came up with that title.
Yeah. I love it. Well, listen, as a father of a daughter as well, I'm inspired by that, right? Because listen, children are just mean anyway, but I want my daughter to be tough like that also, right? And just if boys mess with her, listen, she'll put them down if she has to. She'll put them down if she has to. And I love that, right? Representation is so important. People, I'm telling you, these books are so fun. Right? And they're great journeys that you're going to want to take with your children. And of course, there are wonderful messages underlying on each of them. Okay? They're not preachy, they're fun, but they have great messages under there as well. You're going to have to head on over there, pick up your copies. And as we start to close out here, Terrie, we have 2 books. I'm hoping there's more on the horizon because these are fantastic. Please tell us, what's upcoming for you?
I have many stories. Most of them are short, but I'm going to be writing those stories out and either just putting them up on, ebooks or whatever I can think about doing, because they are short, but they are interesting, because I've been reading them. They are pretty interesting. All of them are. And they were submitted to the Institute of Children's Literature, and they all were recommended to be, to try to sell them. So I never did that. But I do have the stories, and I don't know, I might end up just putting them all in one book, or just writing up a bunch of little stories, like I say, ebooks or what have you. As I move along, I'll figure it out what to do.
Mm-hmm. And a follow-up question that really just came up after hearing you talk about that, when you say that you submitted these things to the Children's Institute, I believe that you said.
The Institute of Children's Literature, that's the actual title, but that's
wonderful.
Fine.
Now, I'm guessing from that means you're going to continue to stick with this children's age group. Is that fair to say?
I would say so, yes. I would say so. I once wrote a story about an incident or an occurrence that we had after moving to Florida, but it is not a children's book. I mean, it's funny, very funny, about my family, and we were new to Florida, and we go to a boat. Oh, we went to this park or something, this waterway, not realizing they had a boat show going on. So it was quite comical. I actually wrote it as a letter and sent it out to people, and they really liked it. So I don't know what I'll do with that, but maybe someday that'll pop out somewhere.
Terrie, last question here for you. I love having this platform. I love having this network to really be able to pay it forward to other artists out there. As I mentioned to you in the pre-screening call, I'm an artist myself, but I always want to utilize my platform to pay it forward whenever the opportunities present themselves. And you are someone that has written 2 books, you've gotten them published, and also, as you've just stated, you have a lot of other short stories that you're planning on writing as well. I'd love to take this opportunity for new writers out there listening in. Listen, the writing journey and the writing path is steep, right? And it is dynamic because, listen, not only writing the book, but also getting it published, because that's a gauntlet and an adventure in and of itself. So I want to take this opportunity and steal some words of wisdom from you, Terrie. For new writers out there listening in, what are some things that you would like to tell them about the journey they're getting ready to take?
Don't put it off. Go forward, go ahead, write what you want to write, but don't put it off, because it probably is just going to be sitting there in a year and not being worked on. But that's what I did. I thought about it, and I just went to work writing it. So that would be my first recommendation.
Yeah. People, I love that, because listen, that's great advice for artists. That's great advice for writers. Well, hey, let's call a spade a spade. That's great advice for anyone, right? Because when we get down to brass tacks here, we're talking about procrastination. And
yeah, you are.
It never works out to your benefit, right? Whatever it is that you're doing or not doing in this instance, it always makes the journey that much harder. And it, for whatever reason, whether it's a fear of rejection, whatever obstacles you're putting in your way, you don't want to put it off, right? Take that leap of faith and tackle it. I love that advice. And you know what I love even more is, people, we're at the end of the interview now. We've discussed so much information pertaining to her books, and yet somehow we've barely scratched the surface. There's still so much left to be discovered. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, TerrieStadlerBooks.com are the places you have to go. Who's Knocking at My Door is the first title we discussed, followed by The Wonder of Ninja. And make sure that you're checking back in frequently, because as she stated, there are other books on the horizon as well, or maybe just one that has a culmination of a number of them. But either way, there's more on the horizon, and you're going to want to check it out, and you're going to want to get lost in it. Terrie, this has been an absolute pleasure. Such an honor. Thank you once again for being a guest on People of Distinction.
And thank you so much for asking me. I loved it. I thought it was great. And you're very comfortable to talk with.